Hello everyone, Les Hewitt here, and welcome to video number 2 in the Power of Focus series. And a very special hello, of course, to all the E-Dinar community. And I hope you've been practicing some of the sales techniques and strategies I shared with you in the very first video. Practice is everything. We're going to talk more about that in the next video, how to create routines and habits that really will pay off big time for you. But the power of focus, what we're going to cover today is how to become laser focused. And what that means is figuring out what your strengths are. What do you do best in whatever role you've got in the business, whether you're in sales, whether you're in leadership, whatever it is. I'm going to share some really powerful strategies with you that I've been using and my clients have been using for many, many years. They work. That's the most important thing. And of course, if you think of the top performers in just about any industry, even in sport, if you're a Formula One racing driver, you better be focused. And normally you win those races sometimes by a fraction of a second. And so having continuous focus, we call it laser focus, is vitally important. If you want to be a top performer, then I'll show you how to get there, because most people are nowhere near as focused as they need to be. Okay, so let's get started and show you how to become laser focused. So first, let me show you something that will prove that you can practically do something impossible in your life, or even in 30 seconds, that most people would think is impossible. And that takes a lot of focus. Now, it also takes awareness. When you're aware of a lot more things, you're aware of what you really want, you're aware of what your skills are and what your weaknesses are, that makes a big, big difference in the results that you're going to accomplish or not accomplish. So there was a gentleman years ago come up to me, and he gave me a very interesting sort of puzzle, and here it is. So he had this big spike. It's about a 7-inch nail. He had it on a little platform like this. And then he said to me, Les, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take these 10 spikes, and I want you to balance all 10 of them on top of this one. All at the same time, by the way. And I sort of took the spikes, and I laughed, and I did this, and I played with this, and I turned around to him, and I said, that's impossible. And he said, yeah, a lot of people think things are impossible, but the truth is, if you were a little bit more aware of how things work, of the possibilities, and even if you're a little bit more focused, things that look really impossible are actually pretty simple. And after he taught me, he was absolutely right. Okay, so let's talk about what's really important about focusing. And one of the very first lessons I learned was you need to know what you're really good at. I call it your strengths. What is it you do best? And in business, that is vitally important. You see, the truth is that salespeople in business, managers in business, top leaders in business, I've found over the years that they really don't focus anywhere near the amount that they need to on their most important priorities every week. And let me share a little quick story with you, just a little bit about my background. I wasn't born in North America. I was actually born and raised in Northern Ireland in a little quiet place called Belfast, and it wasn't that quiet back in the 70s. In fact, it was a war zone, one of the reasons that I was able to leave and come to Canada. But when I went through school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was into sports, loved football, soccer in North America. And when I left high school, I really didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. And my dad said to me, forget college, forget university, we can't afford it. My dad was a clerk in a hospital, administrator, a very simple job. My mom, she was a homemaker. And in that generation, the whole deal was, you know, get a job, get security, stay there until you're 65 so you'll get the pension. That's your life. And that was understandable because back then, you know, people had just gone through the Second World War, and it was very tough, and jobs were hard to find. So that was understandable. Today, it's very, very different. So he said to me, a couple of weeks later, I've got you an interview at the hospital that I work in. And I said, well, what's the interview about? He said, it's 10 o'clock tomorrow, just go along and find out. And so I go along to this interview, and I learned that it's for a medical lab technologist. And that means people who look down microscopes, they count blood cells, they do all sorts of scientific work to help get results for the patients in the hospital. And I actually passed the interview. And a few weeks later, I've started work in the same hospital as my father. Now, let me tell you this. My worst subjects all the way through school were math and science. Figure that out. I'm actually in a career where my two worst subjects are the things that I need the most. Bad choice. Cut a long story short, I spent several years working as a technologist. I got my exams and so on, but I was completely in the wrong career. And thankfully, I had a wonderful mentor come into my life. His name was Jim Rohn, and he said, Les, I think you can do better. I think you're in the wrong career. And he showed me a different way to look at life, different philosophy. He showed me how to set goals. He said, I think you might be good in sales. And I actually got into a big direct sales company and loved it and became the #1 salesperson in the country. 3 years in a row, broke all the records, and I'm not telling you that to impress you with me. It was just I enjoyed the job. So I was using my strengths in this new career compared to what I was doing in the old career. And you really got to understand the importance of that. So let me give you a couple of little exercises here. First thing I want you to do is to write down the 3 things that you do best. What are your strengths? What are you terrific at doing? And you will know this because when you do something you really love and it's easy for you, what happens is the time flies. You know, hours go by and you don't even notice it. And you get things done. And other people, by the way, they'll say, how did you do that? How did you do that so quickly? And maybe, you know, you're great at computers. Maybe even build your own computer, you're so good. And other people are just, they can't figure it out. How did you do that? Or maybe you're good at photography. Or maybe, again, that you're just great at time management, getting things done, organizing. So when you focus on what you do best, you'll notice that the time flies. Other people are going to say, how do you do that? How do you make that so easy? And you'll find that your confidence grows, your energy goes up, your productivity goes up, and of course you do get better results. So vitally important that you figure those 3 things out. The 3 top things for me at the moment are coaching. And I have the privilege of coaching several business owners. I really enjoy that. I'm usually working with those people for several years. I also get invited to speak at international conferences around the world. I really enjoy that interaction. So coaching and speaking are 2 very important priorities for me. And the other one is writing. You know, I've had the joy of writing half a dozen books. Now we're doing audios and of course this video series. I really enjoy the creativity of that. So for me at the moment, I've got to be spending 80% of my week focused on those 3 things: coaching, speaking, and creating new products. And when I'm doing that, I'm really in full flow. My energy's at its peak, and I'm really driving the business forward fast. The opposite is true for me if I'm stuck doing administration, too much detail, micromanaging everything. I need to outsource and delegate that to other people, which I do. And I've really simplified my business now where I can really concentrate on those few very important things. So what are yours? Really important that you write those down, be specific, and then make a list of all of the things that you actually do in a typical week. And even the little 10-minute things, maybe you shuffle paper, maybe you check the mail, whatever it is, but make a list. How many meetings do you attend? What type of meetings are those? If you're making phone calls, what types of phone calls do you make? Make a pretty detailed list. And I don't mean every 15 minutes you have to log in what you're doing, but make a list of everything you do in an average week at work. And then be really honest. In fact, be brutally honest, because here's the big question. You've got the 3 things that you do best, your strengths. And you've also got this list that shows you what you're actually doing, reality check. Be brutally honest answering this question. How much time do you spend on the top 3 things that you do best in a typical week? And I can tell you that the leaders that I've worked with in organizations, it's often 15 to 35%. They need to be at 80%. And you do 2 if you want to be one of the top performers in whatever role you have in the business. And let me give you a really quick story here. I was working with a high-tech company. There were 23 of the top leaders in the room. I was doing this type of a workshop with them. They figured out their top 3 strengths. They made the list, and I started asking them, write down the percentage of the time you spend on the top priorities. And the CEO of the company was there, and he had his head down like this, shaking his head. And I said, what was your percentage? He looked up and he said, 5%. 5%. He's running the company, and he only spends 5% of his time in a typical week doing the things he does best. Now you can imagine how frustrating that is. So here's the deal. Here's what we're going to learn together today. I'm going to show you whatever your percentage happens to be. And by the way, we're not judging you on this. It's not right, wrong, good or bad. It's just your percentage. But I'm going to show you how to get that number if it's not close to 80%, how you're going to get there. So let's do that next. All right, let me destroy a myth that's very popular out there. It's called multitasking. And many people believe that when you do several things at once, you'll actually get more done. The opposite is true. That's absolute nonsense. And here's what the research shows. Whenever you're multitasking and something else happens, for example, let's say you're focused on a really important task, and you're at your computer and the little beep comes up for an email, and you immediately get distracted because you want to check that email. But what really happens is your brain shifts. You go to the email, and then when you come back, here's what this survey and all the research shows is it can take anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes to get your head back mentally and every other way into that most important task that you were attempting to focus on. And you know, I know people in the business world, they're attempting to do 3, 4 things at once. They got a phone going, they're looking at the computer, they're writing stuff. It doesn't work. And here's what does work. Focusing on one thing and getting it finished. So let me give you a couple of strategies here about how to get more out of your week. And some people just make these big to-do lists. And again, to-do lists don't really work for most people. Here's what I see happening with to-do lists. People make a big to-do list for the day. Here's all the things I got to get done. Often they'll start with the easy stuff, and then they intend to get to the really important things as fast as possible. And sometimes it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They haven't even started the first most important task because it was easy to get all that other stuff done. Well, that's not being productive. That's not being focused. That's not being more, energized and getting more results. And then what happens is, of course, many people never get their to-do list finished during the day. So what do? Well, they roll it into the next day. But they've already got a to-do list for the next day. And they play this game all week. They would just roll over, roll over, roll over. And what happens then, later in the week, you're taking work home with you. And if you're married, you have a family, then you just completely mess up the whole family time. And if that rolls into the weekend, like it often does for people, they're working on Saturday and even Sunday, and balance in life, quality of life, it isn't happening. And all you get is relationships being stressed. So let's talk about how we can fix this. First of all, one of the things that is the worst thing you can do is to plan your day. Now, I know some of you are going to be saying, what? I'm not supposed to plan my day. That's right, because it's less productive. Here's the solution. Design your week. There's a big, big difference. When you design your week at the beginning of the week and figure out right at the start of the week what the most important things are that you need to complete, that gives you a tremendous advantage right away. So what I've done with my team over the years, here's how we start the week. We call it the 7-day focus. So the very first thing our team would do before they get into emails, before they make any phone calls, we would spend 25 minutes individually doing our 7-day focus on one piece of paper. We don't make it complicated. And really what we're doing there is saying, what are the most important things I need to complete by the end of this week? Usually that was end of day Friday. And we'd make a list of all those things, and then to really simplify that, we'd highlight what are the top 3. What are the top 3 things? No matter what happens, these need to be completed by end of day Friday. We'd have a little meeting in our boardroom, and everybody would actually write their top 3 on the board. And the reason we did that was for accountability. Because people talk a lot, and then they come up with excuses at the end of the week, why they didn't get done, why they didn't make the sales calls, why this wasn't completed. So accountability is really important regarding performance. So my top 3 were up, and the team's top 3 were on the board first thing Monday morning. The next thing to do to make sure you're better focused during the week is to take your calendar, look at those top 3 that must be completed, and then you're going to estimate how much time am I really going to need to get that done. Now let me give you an example. I used to do interviews and do audio programs. I really enjoyed that. So I might interview someone like Jack Canfield, who was the one of the creators of Chicken Soup for the Soul, which was a hugely successful book series. And so I might have an interview lined up, an audio interview with him on Thursday morning. Let's say it was 9 to 11 o'clock. And so in my calendar, that's a top priority. And so in my calendar, I would immediately put 9 o'clock to 11, blocked out Jack Canfield interview. That is absolute top priority. Now, the only thing that's really going to help me with that is to make sure other people don't interrupt me. In fact, they know those 2 hours, I cannot be disturbed. So if anybody would knock the door in my recording studio, or slide a piece of paper under the door, for example, or tell me there's a phone call, literally, they'd be fired. That's how important your focus time is. And focus time means you are 100% focused on completing one thing and doing it 100%. Now let me repeat that. You're focused on doing only one thing from start to finish so that you get the best result. So 2 hours with Jack Canfield, I'm 100% focused on making sure I've got the right questions, making sure the audio is going well, the interview is going well, and when I wrap that up at 11 o'clock, I'm going to feel good about it. What do you do? Is that the way your week works? Does your team, if you have a team, are they focused on their most important things? Can you imagine if you could get everybody focused on just getting the top 3 done every week by using focus time and people communicating that when you're available and when you're not available. Focus time for me, sometimes it's 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's half a day. Sometimes I'll leave the office. I'll take a whole day away, particularly if I'm planning, for the following year. We call it director day planning. 4 days a year, every quarter, I take a whole day off to review the last 3 months and then plan for the next 3 months and make any adjustments that we need to make before we go into the next 3 months. Those 4 days a year are critically important. And yet what I see a lot is people say, I'm too busy. I can't take the time to plan. Well, that's a very, very bad decision. One really important thing to do at the end of the week is to make sure you get your team together, or even yourself individually if you don't have a team, and take a look at how many things got completed in your top priorities. Did everybody in your team get 3 out of 3? Well, if that happens, then hey, it's high fives, it's celebration, that's a great week. And just imagine if you could do that consistently, if everybody could ensure by designing their week, selecting their top 3 priorities, and then really getting focus time to complete those during the week, and having that celebration, a little quick 15-minute meeting, say Friday afternoon. And also the other side of that, there's a great opportunity to learn, because not everybody's going to get 3 out of 3. I certainly don't manage that every single week, because life happens, the unexpected happens, sometimes it's a big opportunity that happens. But if you only got 2 out of 3, you got 1 out of 3, and sometimes the sky falls in and we get 0 out of 3. that's a great opportunity to reflect, to sit back and think, how could I have done that better? What happened that, things went sideways for me? Great help with that is to have a focusing partner who helps you keep on track every week. I have a person that I had in Vancouver. Every week he would phone in and say, what's your top 3, Les? I would do the same with him. And then at the end of the week he would check in and say, how did you do? It's a great way to keep accountability and to stay motivated. And if you don't have those big results, again, it's a great chance to sit down and have a quick chat. How could we have helped you to do better? What would improve it next week? Because, as I said before, next week, brand new week, clean slate, start all over again. And once you get into the habit of doing that, you'll start to see consistently better results. So, focusing on your top 3 priorities, stop multitasking, and make sure you get time to think, reflect, and plan. I have a question for you. Who are the best focusers? Well, you might think that a brain surgeon would need to be really focused. Well, if he's working on my brain, he better be focused. And then we have great athletes. I mean, if you win an Olympic gold medal, you've been focusing for years and years to get to the top of that podium, obviously. And there's many other examples. But you know who I think are really the best? And they don't have any big qualifications? They're about this tall. They're called kids. And I have a young son, and I'll give you an example about focus here. He was about 9 years old, and a Friday night he came up to me and he said, Dad, my friend Josh has asked me if I can go over and have a sleepover at his house tonight. Can I go? And I said, yeah, sure, go. That sounds like fun. So he goes. The next morning, Saturday, he comes roaring into the house. Dad, 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 guess what Josh has in his house? I said, what? He said he's got a hamster. I think, oh my goodness. And he said, Dad, but you want to see it? It's a white little ball of fur, and it's so cuddly, and it's lovely, and I want one. When do you think he wanted it? The same day. This is called focus. And I said, Andrew, let me tell you what's happening today. First of all, I got to go out. I'm going to be out most of the day. Now, I know Mom isn't going anywhere because she's had a really busy week. She just wants to relax. So I think the best thing would be to, let's talk about this maybe at Sunday dinner when we have our family little focus meeting. And we used to do that every week just to check in with everybody and see how things were going and what questions they might have. And he said, Dad, the pet store closes at 5. Didn't hear a word I said. Focused. And so the rest of that morning while I was there, the phone's ringing off the hook. Andrew, can you come and play? No, I'm getting a hamster. Andrew, we've got a hockey game across the street. Come on, let's play. No, I'm getting a hamster. Focus. So I disappear. I come back about 5 o'clock that night. Guess what we have in our house? You're right, a hamster. I go to Fran, my wife, and I said, I thought we talked about this. And she said, you weren't here. All I got was news bulletins every 10 minutes on hamsters. And finally at 3 o'clock, by the way, here's one of the phone calls he was making to pet stores, in the local area here. And the third call apparently he made, the pet store owner was on the phone, and he said, oh, hamsters, yeah, we got hamsters. The little white ones, we've got the white ones. We close at 5 o'clock. And by the way, son, if you buy the cage, the hamster's free. What do you think that did to his motivation? Wow, through the roof. And apparently at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my wife finally broke down and said, okay, we'll go take a look. Take a look. Game over, right? He gets the hamster, and by 7 o'clock that night, my older daughter came home, and she saw this cage with a little white furry hamster flying around on the wheel, and she said, what's that? I said, it's a hamster. Whose is it? Andrew's. Huh, I want one. 2 days later, we had 2 hamsters. 3 months later, we 22 hamsters. Nobody told us to check. And my wife says, well, this is very educational, isn't it? They're ripping up the floorboards and the carpet. Yeah, very educational. But that's focus. You want something, you seize it, you bear down on it, and kids are the masters. If you have kids, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, can you imagine this in a business setting? You go into the Monday morning meeting, you know, the leadership team's all gathered around, and some bright spark in the team says, I think we should get a hamster for the office. And somebody says, well, John, I think we need about 5 committee meetings to really discuss that big decision. So I think we need to put it off. Ever been in one of those types of committees? Nobody can make a decision. Happens all the time. I hope it's different for you. But kids are the masters. Learn from them. If you're having trouble focusing, let me give you one little tip that you can practice that will really improve that for you, so you can get to that point where you really are laser focused. So I call it the 10-minute burst. So what that means is when you've got something important to focus on, just time yourself for 10 minutes. Have that timer right beside you, a little clock, whatever it is, and then just really concentrate on the one thing. Do not allow any distractions, no people coming in to interrupt you, close the door, go somewhere quiet. And the other big thing that we get distracted of course, is we distract ourselves. You know, we think about something, our mind goes astray, we go on the internet, we can waste all sorts of time doing that, but just for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, concentrate, focus on one thing. And when you get good at that, then you just increase it to 15 minutes. And not too long later, it'll be 20 minutes, and sooner you'll be looking at, hey, I can go an hour on one thing. And you'll be amazed at what you get completed and accomplished when you get an hour just focused on one thing from start to finish. And that's the way you build your ability to focus. And after a while, you'll be going for 2 hours, 3 hours. I've got clients, they work 8 hours, and they're focused on one major thing, and nothing else gets in the way. And that's why they're top performers. So start small and then build up. Okay, another thing that's really important to prevent distractions and interruptions is your ability to say no. And no means no. It's no, I'm not available. Have you got a couple of minutes? No, I'm in the middle of something that's really important. And you see, a lot of people I know, they don't like saying that. And one little exercise, maybe you can get a partner and you can get them to stand up. And this is a fun way to just practice saying no. And what happens is that one person asks the other person to do something. And you can make that up. You can just make it crazy. You can say, hey, lend me $100. Take me out to dinner tonight. Let me drive your fancy new car. And the other person just looks them right in the eye and says, no. And you do that 3 or 4 times and just get used to somebody saying no and saying it forcefully. Because sometimes we take it very personally, and that's not the way to do it. But it is important. If you want to stay focused, if you want to go to another level of performance, there are times during your week when you must say no. And that's when people are interrupting or attempting to distract you. So let me give you a quick example of that. My wife, Fran, was home one night, and she was someone who usually said yes to most requests, particularly people coming to the door. Would you like to donate to this charity? Sure, I'll do that. Well, one night was a knock at the door, and it was a man from the community, and he said, I'd like a couple of minutes of your time. Fran let him in. She knew the man. So he said, we're having a special project that we're launching in the community. We have a little committee set up, and we need someone to run the committee. And we thought you'd be a great person to do that. Be the chairperson. It's only going to be 3 nights a week for a couple of months. And Fran, I never forget this. She looked at John right in the eye, and here's what she said. This is how she said no. She said, first of all, I really appreciate you thinking about me for this important role that you've put together. But the answer is no. This isn't personal. It's not about you. I need to say no for me because my schedule is already totally full. So regretfully, I got to pass on this one, but I wish you lots of success with your project. Now that was completely opposite to what she used to do. And let me give you that again. It's the way she said it. And what John said at the end was, I totally understand. I'm sorry for interrupting your evening. It's the way you say no. If you just bark at somebody, that's probably not going to go down too well. Now, here's the way she said no. She said, first of all, I appreciate the offer, but the answer is no. And this isn't about you. It's not personal. I need to say no for me because I've already got so much on my plate. And I wish you all the best and lots of success. That's a great way to put all that together. But saying no is important if you want to be one of the top performers. And finally, let me give you a little tip about how to become a top performer, particularly as a leader. I was in a great program years ago, and I had another fantastic mentor who was conducting this 4-day workshop, a very intensive workshop. His name was George Adair. And in the middle of this workshop, he got me to stand up on my feet. There were about 40 of my peers in the room for this workshop. And he said, I got a question to ask you, Les. Are you a starter or a finisher? And nobody had ever asked me that question before. And I thought, am I a starter or a finisher? And I thought, well, I'm creative. I get lots of ideas. I start ideas. Yeah, I'm a starter. But I think I also, I get things done as well. And he said, no, you don't. You're a starter. You're not a finisher. I've been watching you. And here's the thing about George. George was never wrong. He was the best facilitator I ever met in my life. And I had the absolute privilege of being around this man for 12 years. And he was another one that changed my life. But he said, no, you're not a finisher. You're not a detailed person. You don't like that stuff. You're a starter. And here's the good news. Starters need finishers and finishers need starters. If you're a starter, as most entrepreneurs are, by the way, we all have these great ideas and we need to get focused on the most important ideas. But if nobody starts something, nothing much happens. So starters are really important. But finishers are also equally important. I need a team of finishers when I'm writing a book. My strength is writing the book, doing the research, but there's all sorts of other things that go into making a book. Designing the front cover, the back cover. If we have cartoons in the book, I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. Other people will go find those cartoons. I'll look at them and we'll select the best ones. Editing, all those things, really that's not my strength. So really decide in the role that you're in, are you a starter or are you a finisher? And again, starters need finishers and finishers need starters. Okay, we've covered one of the most important topics today, the power of focus and getting laser focused. And I really encourage you to go over this video more than once. Hard to remember everything. Do the exercise I've talked about. And you will notice over the next few weeks, the more you focus, the more confidence you'll get, the more energy you'll have, the more momentum you'll create. And of course, that ends up in great productivity and it ends up in fantastic results. And all that goes to the bottom line in your business, and it certainly improves your financial situation. So let's recap 5 of the most important points of this session. Know your strengths. Focus on what you do best. Stop the multitasking. Design your week instead of planning your day. Say no more often. So thanks again for watching, and next time we're going to be talking about how to change your bad habits. I'm going to show you a formula called the Successful Habits System that will change any bad habit you've got into a much more successful habit, and that will be life-changing for you. So until next time, thanks for watching, and for me, Les Hewitt, stay focused and have fun.